It is time for the Just Baseball Show, and we've got a loaded show today. Spring training is full go, and we've got about a week of games under our belt, so we are going to talk about everything that has come in spring training, in Grapefruit League play, in Cactus League play. The first half of the episode is going to be prospect dominated because we've got a lot of guys forcing their way into an opening day roster conversation, or they're just making things fascinating for their ball club. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton, Peyton Genus as well. This is the Just Baseball Show. As always, it is brought to you by BetMGM. Thanks for joining us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, and of course on SportsGrid. And a reminder, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBaseball when signing up, and you will get up to a $1,500 new player offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Just download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code JustBaseball. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. If that bet loses, you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. A reminder, at BetMGM, you should be making it legendary. We've got a lot to get into, Aram Leighton, and we can start with the top two prospects on Just Baseball's Top 100 because they are both making positive impressions. Couple more clicks for Connor Griffin, it seems like, on Twitter and Instagram. But Kevin McGonigal has been statistically the better player so far in the front week. I think I want to start with Connor Griffin because he has generated so many conversations. Jeff Passan reported earlier this week that the Pirates are expected to make an extension offer to Connor Griffin at this point. He's 19 years old. It may happen at some point this spring. The numbers overall are not awesome per se, but there have been 3 tape measure shots, and this guy is running baseball social media right now.
Yeah, it's also one of those situations, especially in such a small sample, where it's like, you know, old school, like use your eyeballs. And I think if you've been using your eyeballs on Connor Griffin this spring training, even, you know, with a lot of the loud outs, so even the data would back it up too, but he just looks comfortable out there. He also looks like a grown man, you know, and I think sometimes you see the 19-year-old trying to make a team, and sometimes they're talented enough to do it, but they look young out there. Connor Griffin is looks the part. But on top of that, again, some of his outs have been some of the hardest hit balls that he's had, you know, so far this spring. So, you know, while it is still 3 for 14 with 3 homers, he has a ton of line outs. He's only punched out 2 times. He looks good defensively. I mean, there's a really strong case here for Griffin to make the team. And I think he is going to. That's going to be my hot take. I'm probably skipping like your follow-up question here. I just wanted to say it before I forgot, because if we're starting the extension talks here, I always feel like that increases the chances a lot. It's usually a good faith indicator going into the extension talks, and you're less worried about that extra year of service time if you know you're going to work out a long-term extension here too. So I don't know. It just has me feeling a little bit more confident on top of the way he's playing.
I would think so. And you think about recent precedent for those pre-debut extensions. Luis Robert, after he signed his pre-debut extension, was on the opening day roster in that COVID-shortened year for the White Sox in 2020. Jackson Chourio, he wasted no time in Nashville. Like, he wasn't an $80 million player as a Nashville Sound waiting on that call-up. Neither was Colt Keith. Colt Keith was on the opening day roster. I know it was a smaller deal as it pertains to total money, but Colt Keith got the extension. It's not like he went to Toledo to open that year. You're not giving a guy that money to blossom as a member of the Altoona Curve, and a $100 million player in Connor Griffin is playing at People's Natural Gas Stadium in Altoona against the Reading Fightin' Phils. That just doesn't happen. So I'm totally with you. I wasn't even going to ask that follow-up because if like he puts pen to paper at some point this spring, he's on the opening day roster. I think it's kind of a non-starter for him not to be on the opening day roster. The question that I will pose to you, is that Pittsburgh's best foot forward to extend this guy? And I think about it in terms of 26 contention, 27 contention. I also think in terms of Paul Skeens retention and Jared Jones retention and Bubba Chandler retention, paying Griffin and having him be on the opening day roster, is that a perfect sign of good faith and best foot forward for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
I think so, because look, it's easy to say yes, right? And I think it's easy to always have the perspective that, oh, why would this guy take the deal? We always talk about that. There's risk involved, especially for pre-debut extensions. There's risk involved. But I think this is a risk you have to take if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? The ship is most likely sailed on you being able to extend Paul Skeens, especially with the precedent here and how much now he's probably going to make in arbitration after the Skubal ruling once he gets there. odds of you extending Paul Skeens probably very slim, if at all. So I feel like this is your chance to retain your superstar. How often do you get two generational type superstar talents here? And look, yeah, there's some risk that maybe he whiffs more than you think, and it doesn't look as good as you hope. That's, I think, still something that I think people are becoming less and less worried about very clearly, and I think it's not as much of a concern clearly at all. But of course, any pre-arb deal or pre-debut deal, there's going to be some risk for an organization like the Pirates, where they have not spent a ton of money. We finally see them spend a little bit. I think it's the perfect way to follow up a good spring or a good off season where you sign some free agents. And I think even more so, this is your one shot to be able to retain a potential superstar talent here, where once you get a couple years into his career, odds are they're not going to meet that $300-400 million price tag it'll probably require.
Yeah, I want to get into what he's done this spring just a little bit because you alluded to it. He's had some really loud outs to go along with his 3 homers. He's 3 for 14 so far this year in big league camp, and all 3 have left the ballpark. And they're not against slouches, but just looking at some of the exit velocities that Connor Griffin has put up, the home runs, it was Seth Martinez, he hit a ball 111 against. He also took Ranger Suarez deep, and that left his bat at 105. And then there was a 108-mile-an-hour homer against Kyle Leahy in Jupiter against the St. Louis Cardinals. Other batted balls, he hit a ball 108 miles an hour on a Shane Baz knuckle curve. Jonathan Hernandez fired a 96-mile-an-hour sinker. He hit it 109. Tim Meza with a 93-mile-an-hour sinker from a weird slot. He hit it 106. He's passing a lot of tests right now.
Yep. And he's not striking out either. And again, small sample, but he doesn't look overmatched. Defensively, he looks very comfortable. And I'd almost guarantee that the way he's going about his business and the way that he's carrying himself in general, around that Pirates big league team is also a big reason why these conversations are, potentially starting to happen here, is because that's the biggest part, I think, is the mental side. When you're going to make this type of commitment to a player that is this young. And I think the mental side is going to be one of the biggest strengths for Connor Griffin and a big reason why he had the year that he had. So I feel like this is, if you have an opportunity to be able to, and he's not a Boris client, right? He's with Excel. So if you have an opportunity to pull this off, this is a roll of the dice that is worth it for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And odds are with a talent like his, it's going to work in your favor. But even acknowledging that the Pirates don't have much wiggle room to allocate, financial commitments to players that aren't contributing to them or may have, just have that risk there. This is one that you have to take because the Pirates need to lock up a superstar.
I want to spend some time on Kevin McGonigal. We only have 2 minutes left in this segment, so this will bleed over into the next segment. But Kevin McGonigal is the number 2 prospect on Just Baseball's Top 100. Before that, let's put this to bed. How many chains is too many chains to be a big league player in spring training? The Max Clark thing needs to stop. He's a very, and you can speak to this, he's just a very nice person that really likes kind of showcasing who he is as an individual on the baseball field. I just thought it was hilarious that the old heads of baseball hated that guy because he was wearing too many chains and lost a fly ball in the sun.
I mean, you got to think about how the jewelry that you put on can affect other people on their couch. You really have to think about that.
Correct.
It's the most insufferable conversation that we've had. I think it was a brutal ending that a lot of players have had some issues in the Atlanta Braves spring training stadium, trying to field fly balls out there because of the wind and because of the sun. He's a 21-year-old who has done nothing but carry himself in a phenomenal way, signing autographs, going about his business the right way. And I just feel like this is a little thing that we're going to focus on when you have some people doing much less ethical things that have major league jobs that a lot of people are very silent about. But God forbid a guy wears some chains and, it's not something you would do. It becomes more of a story than Kevin McGonigal succeeding. And I think that's even the craziest part. More discussion around Max Clark's chains. It's incessant on social media than how incredible Kevin McGonigal is. And also Max Clark's going to be a really good player for a really long time. And I feel really badly for him that his big league spring training has just been totally just destroyed in terms of enjoyment over something so silly.
I feel for the guy big time, and it just sucks. And to your point, Kevin McGonigal's hitting 400 so far in big league spring, and it's not like it's that tiny of a sample. He's 6 for 15 so far with 2 doubles and a triple. We'll dive into McGonigal on the other side of the break. But Max Clark, you're right. That has dominated the headlines, and it is so unbelievably silly that we are having a conversation here. Let him wear what he wants. The sun stinks in Arizona and Florida. Spring training sunshine is going to get in the way of plenty of players. but his teammate, Kevin McGonigal, next. That's coming up on the Just Baseball Show.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it. Yeah. Don't you think so?
The Craig Carden Show, only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on the island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still at James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Just Baseball Show continues. Jack and Aram, we just talked about Connor Griffin. Now it's time to pivot to another guy that could crack an opening day roster, and it's Kevin McGonigal of the Detroit Tigers. It's Just Baseball's number 2 overall prospect. It is live at justbaseball.com. It's the best list you will find anywhere, not just because the rankings are close to perfect. I have some Lazaro Montes complaints there, but the detail and the written reports of all these guys are the most thorough and detailed things that you will find. But Kevin McGonigal, 6 for 15 so far in big league spring. 2 doubles, a triple, 2 walks, a stolen base. He's punched out 4 times in 17 plate appearances. He's hitting the ball incredibly hard. You see, he already popped a 108 against the Philadelphia Phillies, a 108 again, 107.7. I like rounding up. Another 107, another 105, and a 104 as well. He's hitting the crap out of the ball. He's doing everything the Detroit Tigers are asking him to do. The Detroit Tigers have legitimate aspirations to win that division and contend for an American League pennant. Connor Griffin is a more nuanced conversation because he's so young and he hasn't had that much time in the upper levels. Kevin McGonigal, I think, is a more straightforward conversation. If he's not on the opening day roster for the Detroit Tigers, they are not putting their best foot forward.
Well, and I think especially after you send him to the fall league, and I understand that the fall league is a haven for offense, but in 19 games there, he proceeds to be Barry Bonds. It's 362, 500, 710. Also, you move him around the diamond. He looked pretty good at shortstop. He looked very good at third base. We'd never played before. I felt like to add on to the season there, we wanted to see the workload a little bit, ramped up because he only played 88 games in the regular season. You add the 19 on there, get him up, over the century mark, and then have him perform the way that he did. There's not much else that Kevin McGonigal needed to do other than have a great spring. And I think he's checked every single box. And that McGonigal is going to rake. And he's done that in the small sample that we have. But as you said, sizable compared to some of the others that we're working with where you're 6 for 15. But beyond that, he has defended well. And I mean, at shortstop, he's looked really comfortable there. He made a couple really good plays in the last couple games, whether it was turning a double play, ranging to his left and right, making good throws on the run. McGonigal's one knock is going to be the range potentially, but he makes all the shorthanded plays that he needs to make. And the Tigers, as he's making a play, AJ Hinch is on the broadcast talking about how much confidence the Tigers as a team and as an organization have gained in their positioning of their players. So if you are already feeling really confident about the positioning and where you are setting up your infielders, and that is the one knock on Kevin McGonigal is maybe the range can get a little bit short. Well, you hedge that. He's shorthanded. Yeah. He's making all the plays that he needs to make. And now you feel really good about the development as an organization. And when it comes to positioning, well, You just hedged maybe the one weakness McGonigal had there, right? Then he's getting on the base paths and he's wreaking havoc. And I think that's something that they really need. I think Detroit, in terms of manufacturing runs and, not always needing to have the Riley Green homer and being able to create runs in different ways, I think is also huge for them. And I agree with you. Like, with the way that Kevin McGonigal has performed, assume he continues to perform this spring training, I don't see how the Tigers were clearly in win now mode with the Skubal and Fromber tandem as well that you're only going to have now for 1 year. A team that's clearly in win now mode with the way McGonigal has looked, I don't see how you could start on opening day, put that lineup card in without McGonigal on it and say with a straight face that this is the best team that the Tigers could have put together on day one.
I'm totally with you. And the other thing that jumps out to me about that is what they have at the major league level. If I were to sit here and say McGonigal should be the opening day second baseman, that's just not educated, because Gleyber Torres accepted the qualifying offer. Gleyber Torres is back with Detroit. You are not unseating Gleyber Torres because a top prospect is amazing. Even if they had, like, I'm trying to create this make-believe world where, like, Baez was playing like a serviceable major league player, or Trey Sweeney, for example. Let's say Sweeney took a big step in 2025. And Sweeney was there, and he looked like the opening day shortstop, and McGonigal needs to pretty much just bunny hop him or leapfrog him and be objectively better than Trey Sweeney for it to be their best foot forward. Their projected opening day shortstop right now, via Roster Resource and the great John Becker at Fangraphs, is Zach McKinstry. And Zach McKinstry was an all-star last year. Zach McKinstry was an all-star because he can play literally everywhere well, and he can be a serviceable bat while playing literally everywhere. Don't take the utility out of that guy's game. He fits really well on this roster. McKinstry can play everywhere while you have McGonigal playing shortstop. You don't need to find an everyday spot for a good utility bat. That's the whole point of utility. He can give everybody days off. Don't take the utility away from McKinstry. Let McGonigal play short. And when McGonigal needs a blow because he's getting acclimated to Major League Baseball, McKinstry can play there. When Colt Keith struggles defensively at third base and he needs an afternoon, put McKinstry there. It takes away from a couple of people, I feel like, if McGonigal isn't on the roster.
100% agree. And I think, look, McKinstry had a really nice start to the season. And we think we saw that, right? Yeah. Going into the All-Star break, he was at about a 840 OPS. And then from that point forward, he had a 656 OPS. I think he's somewhere between those two, and it was a really nice year. And maybe he took some steps forward. But I think if you go into the year saying, "Hey, it's last year's first half Zach McKinstry," you're probably being a little ambitious. I think their best foot forward is McGonigal, with, as you mentioned, McKinstry moving around, especially with some of the defensive limitations that they could potentially have there. So I love McKinstry as a super utility type, and I think when you get McGonigal in there from day one, it's going to give you the opportunity as well to get him fully settled in earlier into the season. And then the other thing is, I mean, you look at the American League Rookie of the Year conversation. When it comes to the PPI pick, McGonigal is going to give you a great shot. It's a hitter award. We always talk about that. But also, the biggest thing with the with the Rookie of the Year award is that it's usually a battle of attrition, right? So many rookies have these great months, but then they have really bad months, and they have these ups and downs, and then a guy that's the favorite in June is rarely the favorite in August, unless it's a Paul Skeens type of situation. I feel very good about McGonigal being as steady as anybody. And I think if you have that guy up, you're going to have a really good chance at having that PPI pick being yours. And we know how much the Tigers like to draft and how successful they've been doing that in the Scott Harris era.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I was talking about this. It's funny, earlier today on the Marlins broadcast against the St. Louis Cardinals, the NL Rookie of the Year race is going to be a heavyweight fight. And it's really hard to break through when you've got guys like Nolan McLean and J.J. Weatherholt, and I'm probably forgetting a couple off the top of my head, Connor Griffin, if he's on the roster on opening day. The AL feels way more wide open. We've got about a minute left in this segment, but we're going to keep on cooking for a while on these prospects. There is a guy making things really interesting for the Colorado Rockies. And I'm going to give you his name right now, but we're going to go more in depth on the other side of the break. Charlie Condon struggled last year. The Golden Spikes Award winner in 2024 at the University of Georgia set a national home run record. Charlie Condon this spring has come back looking like the Charlie Condon that the Colorado Rockies drafted in the top 10 in 2024. The numbers on Charlie Condon, he's 7 for 14 so far this spring with 3 homers, 5 ribbies, 2 walks, and in 17 plate appearances, just 3 punch-outs. There were some glaring issues with Charlie Condon. he is swinging a really hot bat right now. Again, we are going to expand on the Charlie Condon conversation on the other side of this break. Keep it locked on the Just Baseball Show.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Just Baseball Show, as always, presented by BetMGM. A reminder to make it legendary. Jack and Aram. Charlie Condon, the Colorado Rockies, is who we were talking about going into the break. The Rockies have a wide-open first base battle happening right now. Troy Johnston is in there. Blaine Krim is in there. TJ Rumfield is in there. Charlie Condon might be the leader in the clubhouse right now. Again, the Golden Spikes Award winner at the University of Georgia in 2024. Condon has 3 homers already this spring. He's been insane. Why has he been insane? And I guess what were your concerns coming into this spring that he's bucked?
I think he cleared up a lot of those concerns with the second half he had even last year. And I think he's carried that into the spring this year. He is destroying fastballs, and that's been his bread and butter since college, right? And then destroying the hangers, which was his bread and butter in college. My concern was, okay, better spin. He struggles to stay on stuff, sharper spin on the outer half. And in college, he did a good job of laying off of it. In early pro ball, he was chasing that, and that's like his blue zone, right? And it was really a blue zone for him where it was often a rollover or a swing over based on his path. Now he's recognizing it really, really well. And over his final 50 games of the regular season last year, getting up to Double-A Hartford, where obviously that's a big leap for him. Final 50 games, he only chased 16% of sliders. And I think that was a huge wrinkle for him, where it's like, I'm recognizing spin better. I'm crushing everything middle in. And on the pitches that are breaking away from me, I'm laying off of it. If you dot 3 sliders on the outside black, tip my cap. And Condon's leaning into what he's great at and hedging what he's not great at. And you could have a really long career when you're a 6'6" slugger with plus raw power like Condon has. So I think we're seeing that in real time here. And he's really settling into what made him great in college at the professional ranks. And that's hard to do because sometimes you can't just copy paste what made you great in college. And I think we're seeing Condon do that.
And building off of that, man, like if he can hedge the concerns around better spin even more, we had this conversation around him when the Rockies drafted him. When the Rockies took him, what do we say? We say 81 games a year he was going to see spin that was like not that good because he's playing at altitude. So it worked in his favor. You got to worry about the 81 road games, surely. But if he is laying off of that better spin, all of a sudden more and more of those turn into hangers or cement mixers in his home ballpark, and he gets 81 games a year. He could be the next Coors Effect guy that doesn't make a lot of money in free agency because you have a lot of concerns, like Trevor Story, right? Trevor Story probably should have been a $200 million player, but there were plenty of concerns that he couldn't hit outside of Colorado. Nolan Arenado, there were plenty of concerns when he went to St. Louis that he couldn't hit outside of Colorado. Condon, if all goes right, Obviously, you need to blossom into stardom and borderline superstardom. But if all goes right, he seems like that next guy. And my counter is, who cares? When you have 6 years, you're still going to be a 9-figure player when you hit the open market because you kill opposing pitching at your home ballpark.
And again, I think the approach part is a huge way to at least chip away at the road issues as well, right? If you're drawing your free passes, and anyone's going to have the Coors effect splits because of how different it looks, home versus away and just how it sets you up. But I think it's a great point. I mean, I think the Rockies, given where they've been begging for players that can even just dominate at Coors, right? Let alone just be solid players, period. If you can dominate at Coors, that's great. They need to be great at Coors. And so I think Condon is one of those guys that can usher in that new era. And it takes, a big power guy that's going to absolutely kill at Coors, cut that strikeout rate down. And then again, I think seeing the way that he cut the strikeout rate down in the second half of the season, where it was barely above 20% in Double-A Hartford, if he is just serviceable on the road, to your point, this is going to be an all-star guy potentially and a solid player for them. I think there's still some hurdles to get through. And even if he's a subdued version of that, I still think this is a huge building block for the Rockies that are going to take any building block they can.
He's got a whale of a teammate right now. And Zach Veen has 2 walk-off homers so far in spring training. We've got about 2 minutes left in this segment, but I did want to bring up Veen before getting off the Rockies and go to the other prospects, and we'll spend the next 10 minutes talking about those other prospects. But Zach Veen's 2 walk-off homers, 109 off the bat and 447 against Sean Boyle. And then at the beginning of spring training, 113 off the bat and 468 feet. This new look Zach Veen is a dream come true, man.
He's got a lot more room to work with now, right? I mean, I think Veen was always going to whiff a little bit more than we thought. He's a longer levered guy. And when it was a rail thin build, it was tough to see how he was going to be able to get his, right? And now we're seeing one of the home runs he hit was on the outside black, and he hit it 447 feet to dead center. It's the mass equals gas component inside it, and it works for hitters as well. And I think with Veen just being more physical now, he has more room for error. He can do damage, and I think he needs to lean into the damage side more. And I don't think it's coming at the expense of his speed. So it's been one of the best stories that we've seen so far, and I think it can continue to be an exciting story. Even if he doesn't fully reach that prophesized ceiling, I still think this is a really solid player that is building on something that could at least be a part-time role. If he's a bulk platoon guy for the Rockies with some more thump, that's a far cry from where we were at last year.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I was a large part. I feel like the prophesized ceiling for Zach Veen, and I apologize for that, but I can recalibrate and still want him to be a heck of a player and hit 470-foot tanks at Coors Field. But Zach Veen, Charlie Condon, 2 really exciting pieces for the Colorado Rockies. We're going to get to other guys that are proximity big leaguers that have had really strong starts to the spring. That's coming up in a moment, and keep it locked right here on the Just Baseball Show.
Nick Kurtz will receive American League first place votes this year. You going to buy that, George? Or you want to sell that? I believe we had Caminero, we had Raleigh, we had Aaron Judge,
Bobby Witt, he'll be there as well. I'm a big fan of Kurtz. No, we're not related, by the way, for those who are wondering. Okay, not as far as I know. I keep getting that.
You're a little taller than him,
right? Just a wee bit. Yeah, Nick is a.
Be like this, actually.
I'm not sure Nick would fill in his room. Yeah, that's something like that. But my only problem with him, I think he's gonna have a great year. All right, I think he's going to have a very good year here. He's going to be fantastic. I picked 12 in my points league. If he's there at 12, I'm taking him. I'm just grabbing him here. I don't have a second round pick, but I'm taking him anyway. My only issue is this: they're not going to be very good, right? They may be a little better than expected. Maybe they approach 500, maybe, but they're not. It's tough to get MVP votes when you're not winning. All right, you're not in the playoff contention or anything like that. Are you going to be able to beat out an Aaron Judge? I'll buy. I think he's going to have a big season. I think he can get 1. I don't think he'll be very, won't be top 3 or anything. But I think he can get 1. Yes, I'll buy.
Yeah, I'm going to sell this. I was really I understand what the metric said, and a lot of smart people, George, that I asked told me that Judge probably was the MVP. But man, Cal Raleigh couldn't win MVP with that season that he had last year. And I understand all we're doing is asking questions about first place votes, but don't think there's a lot of love for the voters with Sacramento, no matter what Nick Kurtz does. I'm going to sell this.
Fantasy Sports Today. Friday starting at 3 p.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Just Baseball Show presented by BetMGM. Jack and Aram, we both just watched J.J. Weatherholt play a baseball game. J.J. Weatherholt was fantastic defensively at second base today on Monday. He also had a fly out to the warning track that was 107 off the bat, and if there was no wind, it was projected to go 430 feet. He already has a 422-foot homer to Straightaway Central in spring training, and this is in Florida. Weatherholt is packing a punch right now. He's putting together really quality at-bats. He's playing a heck of a second base defensively right now. Not only does he look like he is the second piece of the up-the-middle tandem of the future for St. Louis with Mason Wynn playing short, he looks like he should be considered one of the front runners, and it's hard to unseat Nolan McLean, but one of the front runners for National League Rookie of the Year at this point.
Especially since it's the hitter award, right? I think he's got a real, strong case as one of the favorites. I agree. I think the biggest thing is having Weatherholt at second base. My biggest concern was the range at short, kind of similar to the McGonigal conversation. I think McGonigal has a little bit more, carry on his throws, which helps. And a little bit more comfort throwing from different angles. But Weatherholt at second base looks like a well above average defender. So now you put him there with Mason Wynn at shortstop, and that's going to be a really fun duo. The power has been the fun thing to continue to watch, just I think grow with him. And it was funny because I'm sitting behind home off the bat. I definitely thought that was gone. But I was curious with the projected distances. The wind was killing the ball today. But with Weatherholt, he's another guy that it's similar to the McGonigal. They're cut from the same cloth conversation offensively where I think they're going to be as steady as they come when it's a rookie situation there where there's always going to be turbulence. And I'm sure they'll have some stretches where baseball is hard, but those are the kind of guys that you put up on opening day and you just know they're going to carry themselves like big leaguers and operate a little bit different. Now I understand that the Cardinal situation's a little bit different because they're not potentially looking at the playoffs this year, but to your point, there's another guy that has a very, very strong chance of winning Rookie of the Year, and a Cardinals team with Chaim Bloom that also is very much going to value the PPI pick. I think we see him up there, and they're pretty much treating him as such, it seems like. And I think for Cardinals fans that deserve a little bit better of a product and more money spent on the team, at least now we're seeing a better product of young, exciting players that are out here right now, and Weatherholt's kind of leading that new era and that new charge.
Yeah, there's going to be a new level of excitement in St. Louis this year, I think. And it's going to be disappointing because you don't have the stalwarts and the aircraft carriers that are playing every single day. But Mason Wynn and J.J. Weatherholt can get people to the ballpark. Ivan Herrera can get people to the ballpark. I think Jimmy Crooks is a catcher instead of Pages and Pozo like they ran out last year, can get a couple more people to the ballpark. And then you've got Jordan Walker as well. We'll see what that guy can do in 2026, looking to bounce back. I want to bring up another guy to you and our first pitcher that we're talking about today before wrapping with a hitter in the NL West. Andrew Painter made his spring debut. It was his first big league spring training outing since that exact date in 2023. So 3 years to the date from his first big league spring. On Sunday, March 1st, he went 6 up and 6 down against the New York Yankees. Pop out, ground out, strikeout, ground out, line out to right. What did you make of Andrew Painter if you had the chance to watch any of his 2-inning start against the Yankees?
It's funny. I thought he looked great. And then you get the stuff plus grades after, and they weren't as loving. I don't take too much of it. He threw 20 pitches. He threw 13 fastballs, and he pounded the strike zone. I think the clear goal there was just to get out and get comfortable again. And I think he was probably well aware of the last time he threw in a spring training game setting. So I think it was very positive. The command overall looked very good in a short sample there. And I think there's more velo in there as he gets more comfortable. And I'm not too worried about it. Now, the shape is going to be a little bit more velo dependent. And so you're going to want to see him more at the 97, 98s. But I think this was a great start for him. And, again, that's where I think sometimes the immediate stuff plus cards that we get after every outing can sometimes take away from what we really need to just watch and the context of the situation. And I think given the context of the situation, this was a great start to the spring for Andrew Painter.
Yeah, Andrew Painter again, 6 up and 6 down with a punch out against the New York Yankees in his spring debut this year. Last prospect that I want to hit on with you is Ryan Waldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and this comes at recommendation of Peyton Genis, who loves what Ryan Waldschmidt has done. Waldschmidt much like McGonigal and much like Griffin, could have a route to playing time sooner than I think a lot of people would expect. Is this one of those guys that could kind of speed run the minor leagues? He was a first-round pick of Arizona in 24 out of the University of Kentucky.
I think so. I wouldn't be surprised. I think there's some buzz around that, around the D-backs org that like this guy could get up there and help this team that has a very unique outfield situation right now. I think, look, Lourdes Gurriel apparently is ahead of schedule, and that helps. But I still think you're not going to rush things too much there. And when you look at the skill set that Waldschmidt brings to the table, okay, I know you don't want a guy to debut just a short platoon, but I think that's even a guy that you could still, short platoon. I still think it's a situation where he could at least do that out of the gate and you ease him in more and more. I also just think with the defense he brings in a corner, I like Alec Thomas, but I think Waldschmidt can give you a lot more. And the skill set is one that I think will play as well. He's super patient. There might be a little bit more whiff, but he's super patient. At one of the lowest chase rates in the minor leagues last year. He doesn't deviate from the approach. He pulls the ball in the air at a high clip that will be rewarded very consistently in Arizona. And then on top of that, he's hitting the ball harder than he ever has this spring. You have a 112, a 111, and a 107 all in the same game the other day. And even the outs otherwise have been extremely, extremely loud. I think the defense has come along so much to where he looks like he can play an above average corner, and he gives you speed as well as a guy that can take 20 plus bags. So, I mean, this is a player that you can utilize in different roles. Again, he destroys lefties, but I think if he's up there, he should be playing every day. But with the questions in the outfield where it's Lawler, Alec Thomas, and then Corbin Carroll, who may be banged up for the first couple weeks, I think there's a strong case that, Waldschmidt could get out there and make the team. You're going to send him to Albuquerque, and it's going to be bombs away anyways.
Right. Can I ask?
Or not Albuquerque, but what? Reno?
Reno. Yes.
Reno. We'll go play in Albuquerque too.
Biggest little city in the world. Reno is also a kind of moon-adjacent environment in the Pacific Coast League. Can I ask you about Spencer Jones of the New York Yankees? Spencer Jones has 3 homers so far this spring. They've left the bat at 112, 108, and 107. They've traveled 408, 427, and 401. They're moonshots that Spencer Jones is hitting right now. He's 3 for 10, I know. But his 3 hits are very, very loud. Where do you stand on Spencer Jones of the Yankees right now?
He's one of those players where you put, the future value, you put the plus grade next to it because you say, if I'm wrong, it's going to be because he is better than I thought because we left him off the top 100. There's a swing adjustment every spring. There's some exciting results every spring. And then we endure the turbulence that comes along with the season. I'm just going to not really buy into it until I fully see it over a larger sample. I think with the speed and the power, he's going to be able to carve out a role for himself, but I think Jason Dominguez has a much better chance of being able to help this team this year. And I understand that Jones gives you a little bit more on the defensive side, but I really do believe that. I'm going to be skeptical until proven otherwise. It's pretty much home run or strikeout right now. I think that's generally what it's going to be. I like the adjustment. I think there's implications that it could help, but we've done this dance before, and he's going to need to do it over the course of a full season. It was a little bit better last year, so even a little bit better this coming season should be enough for him to be a big leaguer. I just don't know what that role looks like, and a spring is just not going to be enough to convince me.
We've got a little over a minute left in this segment. I would like your 60-second synopsis of Jesus Midday to this point, because the Brewer prospect, 3 for 15 with a triple. He has popped some interesting EVs on some weird swings as well. So you have a minute. Floor is yours. What's your Jesus Midday takeaway?
I mean, he's one of the more talented teenagers we've seen. I just put out a piece after sitting down with Brewers assistant director of player development, Brenton Del Chiaro, talking about how Midday showed up to camp 10, 15 pounds stronger. And I think that is already evident with how quickly he's moving the bat. This guy gets fooled on the front side, just throws his hands at the ball, and it's a 106-mile-an-hour liner, beating the right fielder over the head. This is some freak talent that we're seeing on display in spring training. Now, he still has some work to do. I think he gets on that front side too early. But if you're going to have the tendency to get onto that front side too early, it hedges it when you're a guy that can swing from that position and still put up 106, 107s plus. He has been amazing to watch. And I think this is a player that you don't see very often as a switch hitter with his bat speed. So it's been cool to see him put it on display in big league spring training.
A lot to do, but Jesus Midday, really strong impression. We're going to get to a big leaguer and a fascinating rumor next on the Just Baseball Show.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it. Yeah. Don't you think so?
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
It feels a little weird going from the future face of the Brewers and Jesus Midday to the former face of the Brewers on the pitching side, Freddie Peralta, but there's a lot coming out of Freddie Peralta world right now for the New York Mets. Mets just acquired him via trade, obviously, for Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat. It seems like he would be the perfect extension candidate for the New York Mets, and there have been a couple of reports. So the first one SNY put out when Freddie was initially approached about the Mets possibly asking him about an extension. He was asked if there were any conversations as it pertained to a possible extension with the New York Mets. He said with a smile, no comment. Ken Rosenthal then reported on Monday that Freddie Peralta would, in all likelihood, prefer a long-term deal somewhere he can finish his career when he hits free agency, as opposed to a high-dollar, short-term kind of deal. It's an interesting thought exercise, and I want to go through this thought exercise with you right now because that, in turn, creates a heck of a lot more suitors than a 4-year, $150, $160 million deal where this guy's getting $35, $40 million a year. If he was looking for that and he was trying to get a $40 million a year deal as a pitcher, he's probably only signing with one of the Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, Blue Jays, maybe Phillies. There are a couple of teams that can throw that at people. But if he's looking for a longer-term deal and he's looking to make $25 million a year or $30 million a year, there are a lot of teams that can get involved here. We have no idea what the CBA and what that structure will shake out, to look like. But if you're the Mets, what kind of deal do you place in front of Freddie Peralta this year to eliminate the idea of him leaving and signing with a team, and a team that will probably be in one of many suitors?
I think this was an interesting play by his camp as well, in the respect that Stearns is typically like to go short-term, higher AAVs if he's going to do that for a pitcher, and just generally shorter-term deals. So I think it creates an interesting situation where I'm sure ownership, is going to say, hey, we'll extend this guy. And Stearns is going to say, well, this is typically not the type of deals I like to give out. And I think they're trying to push Stearns to and push the conversation around it all to be more out of the wheelhouse of what Stearns likes to do, because I think that's going to be how they approach him, right? Buy out a couple years here, leverage the year that you have right now, and feel pretty good about having him for a few more years. But I think for Peralta, he's like, I've already, I think I've already kind of proved it, and I'd rather just lock in one more big time deal and go from there and maximize the long-term money here. I feel like some of it is kind of the play of just trying to set things up to be a longer term setup instead of another short term deal where he's going to hit free agency, but now he's got to pitch to prove it and stay healthy, which he's done so far. But there's a risk in itself with that. I think for the Mets, though, given the ownership flexibility that they have, why not go longer term with a guy like Peralta? I feel like they don't have a ton of money locked up long term on most of their arms. And yeah, you have some guys coming up and Nolan McLean, who's great as well. But I don't think there's any harm in allocating some money here for a guy that you traded for. And I think it also helps, the trade be a little bit more palatable as well.
I would think so. And I'm just trying to think about the kind of deal that I would give Freddie Peralta if I were in one of these rooms making the decisions on the contract that you could offer this guy, because he's been really good over the last couple of years. Freddie Peralta also turns 30 this year. So it would be a newly turned 30-year-old getting an extension from you. What does longer term mean to him? Does that mean a 5-year deal? Does he retire at 35? Does that mean a 7-year deal? It probably means 7 more than it means 5. Freddie Peralta over the last couple of years, it's been ERAs going back to 21. It's been ERAs at 2.8, 3.6, 3.9, 3.7, and 2.7 last year. He was a 3.5 win pitcher through the eyes of Fangraphs, and in 176 and 2/3, he flirted with 200 punch-outs. He had 204 strikeouts last year. So you're getting a quality product right now. Things change after someone turns 30 years old. If you were in a front office right now, and say you were in a mid-level market, I'm trying to think about a good example. Like Kansas City was the first team that jumped to the forefront of my mind, but I'm also thinking about, I don't know, like I'm struggling to pick. Maybe San Diego. Do you offer San Diego, or does San Diego offer Freddie Peralta a 7-year contract?
I could see a team. I think that's how you separate and sway him in your direction. My concern is generally, I don't think I'd ever want to give a pitcher on the other side of 30 years old 7 years. And I don't think it's terrifying. I think that's something that the Mets could actually leverage here. But I also understand it from Peralta's perspective, right? Instead of going 3-4 years where you're going to have to go really, really high AAV, which is still great for Peralta, but then you hit free agency at 34. If you're not pitching at the peak of your powers, look at what just happened to Zach Gallen. Who's not even that old, and how hard it was for his market to materialize. So I feel like if you're a team that is trying to pull him away, it is probably your best bet, because you're not going to be able to go super high AAV and have to potentially risk the back couple years. But I don't know if I'd want to be paying Freddie Peralta when he's 37. So I think it's something that the Mets could leverage, though, where if you have a contract 6 years, 7 years from now that is way in the books a little bit, odds are the Mets are going to be fine with it, whereas some of these other teams aren't. And I feel like that's something that the Mets should actually leverage here and go longer term.
We got about 2 minutes left in this segment. Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Freddie Peralta's first pitch in 2027 comes while wearing a New York Met uniform?
Pretty high, because
I'm
think
at like
even
an 8. I'll get that out of the way right now. I'm at an 8.
So 1 to 10, you're at an 8?
Yeah.
I'd say I'm about an 8 as well, because even if Peralta doesn't get what he wants on the long-term side, they're going to outbid anybody on the short-term side, AAV as well. And so I think there's 2 different ways that the Mets can win this. And if they do go that route, I think they're going to just go ridiculous AAV to where Peralta's just going to say, okay, yeah, I did prefer the longer-term guarantee, but this is too much to turn down. Kind of like, I don't think it'll be as egregious as the Kyle Tucker situation, but something along those lines where it's like, okay, maybe I don't need the long-term as much anymore, and I can maximize this with some opt-outs and things like that.
Yeah, and we'll see how the market shakes out for Freddie Peralta and pitchers in general. I really don't think we'll have any sort of closure on this before a possible labor strike and certainly labor negotiations going into the 2027 season. So I feel like it's unlikely that Freddie Peralta signs an extension this year, but the Mets could also effort to get out ahead of it. If they do and Freddie hits the open market, surely it would come after a lockout if a lockout were to happen. But we shall see. Again, Freddie Peralta has established himself as one of the better pitchers in all of Major League Baseball, but he would be hitting free agency at 30 years old. And the question remains, what would a long-term deal look like? We are going to wrap with a whole bunch of spring training stuff, kind of rapid fire. Peyton Genis is going to hop on for the final segment with us. 6 minutes on the big leaguers making waves in spring training, both in the Grapefruit League in Florida and the Cactus League in Arizona. That's coming up next on the Just Baseball Show.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Just Baseball
doing,
Show
boys?
comes to a close. What are you wearing on your head right now? What is that hat?
So there's like the special promotion the Erie Seawolves did. It was like their alternate.
Nice.
It's the
Oh,
Moon
the John
Mammoths.
Oliver. Yeah, the John Oliver Moon Mammoths.
Yeah. I got the Moon Mammoths hat. My girlfriend's name is Luna. So anytime I see something with a moon, I have to get it,
That's good. I love that. Podcast P, what big leaguers are jumping out to you in spring training right now?
There's a lot. And I mean, first, I think just to start, Freddie Peralta, 3 perfect innings as Mets debut to piggyback off what you guys just said. And that was...
You know what? Extend him. Yeah, let's wipe the last 8 minutes.
And then that was a day after Nolan McLean threw 4 innings of 1-hit baseball. And that duo, I mean, like, that's just... They're similar in the sense just the stuff is gross. The stuff is just insanely gross. And I'm very excited to see that duo play out. But to go to a different division rival, Spencer Strider, very interesting. Velocity does not look good. He was sitting around 93 miles an hour in his first spring appearance. He was sitting 95 last year in the big leagues. He was sitting 97 in 2023. It's just been down. And it's hard to watch. Although I will say Strider did mention that he's not necessarily focused on velocity right now. He's focused on shape, but it's still definitely something to keep in mind.
Yes, 100%. Aram, I want to throw this your way. How concerned would you be in a velo dip from Strider this early in spring? We're talking in the first week of the month of March.
I'm not as much compared to like some of the stuff I've seen on social, because I also think you have to look at Strider and who he is. He's a guy that is very unique in his approach, and I think I was just watching the Marlins, one of the pitch design sessions, those guys will throw out about like 80%, and they're focused on spin and they're focused on shapes. And for a guy like Spencer Strider, who I think is very keen on it being different this year, I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of going in there thinking about that exactly. Now, if we're getting 3 more starts out here and it's getting closer to the season and he's still sitting at 93, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But I'm going to give Strider a little bit more grace here, because I think he's capable of running it up higher if he wants to. And I do think that this is probably just a little bit of a different approach for him after a year where it was very frustrating for him to try to enter it a little bit different. It doesn't strike me as the type of guy to go into the next year the same way if it didn't go the way that he wanted it to.
Yeah. Who's your next guy, Peyton?
I wanted to focus on some young guys now. Now there is some bleed into the prospect realm, but it isn't guys you guys have touched on.
Yep.
On Thursday and Friday, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder, Jose Franco, and Chase Petty combined for 9 1/3 innings of 1 run, 2 hit, 14 strikeout ball with 35 swings and misses.
Wow.
The Reds' B rotation is obscenely gross.
Yeah, it seems like it. And Lauder is someone that fascinates me. Burns is a clear breakout candidate for so many people right now. But what does a good year, Aram, in your eyes, look like for Rhett Lauder?
Health. I just think the floor is so high. Okay, if he struggles to, run prevent the way that we were hoping in Great American Ballpark, and he pitches to a low 4s, I don't care if he's throwing 140, 150 innings. I will say, and this is a velo spot where I am looking at it, coming off of all the injuries that he dealt with last year, he averaged 96 miles per hour in those 30 pitches Rhett Lauder did. That is a great sign when it's four-seamer, sinker, and then the rest of the arsenal. He's going to command, he's going to move the ball around, and he's going to have a disgusting changeup and a good slider. So for me, it's all about the health. I think the ability is clear-cut, at least a 4-starter in the big leagues, and it looks like in the early going now he's healthy and the arm's feeling live.
We got about a minute left. Peyton, you got 1 or 2 more guys you want to throw at us?
Of course. So Cole Reagans looked awesome in his spring debut. His velocity was up almost 2 miles an hour, and he went back to more of that bullet slider shape that he had in 2023 rather than the curveball-y shape he had the last 2 years. I mean, as you know, Reagans was dominant in 2025, although the results weren't quite there. And to stay with the Royals, Jack Caglione popped his 3rd exit velocity of the spring over 115 miles an hour, including 1 at 120. His MLB max last year was only 114. So he's seen the ball well. He's hitting the ball well.
Okay. Reagans, then Caglione. Aram, you got 30 seconds. Go.
I'm still all in on Cags. Well, first of all, if Reagans is healthy, biggest X factor, I think, potentially for the Royals. But Cags, give this guy some grace. If the swing decisions are half decent, I think he's going to have a monster power year in that ballpark.
Yeah, I love
100%.
that. Cole Reagans is fascinating to me. Cy Young votes. He gets back to that this year. And that would be the thing that really gets, I think, Kansas City over the top and into an AL contention conversation. They've been trying to get there financially, and they just haven't gotten there on field. I think this is the year that they do push to that on field. I think guys like Isaac Collins really help as a background actor, but I think Caglione taking a huge step and Reagans getting back to what we know he can be are 2 massive steps. So thank you all so much for joining us. Again, really appreciate you listening and watching wherever you may be doing that. Spotify, Apple Pods, SportsGrid, YouTube, and X. We'll be back with you all this week. Happy World Baseball Classic week, everybody. For Peyton and Aram, I'm Jack. Talk to you guys later.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Michigan at a 57% chance right now, followed by Arizona, Duke, and Houston. Here's the interesting caveat, Joe, for Michigan, who's the favorite right now. On February the 8th at 5 a.m., they were trading at 40%. Today, 57%. People like themselves some Michigan here.
Well, Donnie, exactly, because Michigan, it just vaulted themselves to number one in the AP poll.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.